What if I told you that the one thing holding you back from everything you want, success, love, confidence, is not your skills, your background, or even luck? It's the voice in your head that whispers, I'm not enough. We've all felt it, that creeping doubt before a big opportunity, the hesitation before speaking up, the fear of being judged. But here's the truth. That voice, it's a lie. And today we're going to expose it, rewire it, and replace it with unshakable belief. Because the difference between those who achieve their dreams and those who don't isn't talent, it's certainty. And by the end of this, you'll walk away with the tools to shift from fear to power, from self-doubt to confidence, from not enough to unstoppable. Let's dive in. Step 1, the silent struggle. You know that feeling, the moment when you walk into a room full of people and suddenly it feels like everyone else belongs except you. You look around and they seem so confident, so put together, so sure of themselves. Meanwhile, there's this voice in your head whispering, what if they find out I don't really know what I'm doing? What if I'm not good enough? It's a thought that creeps in before a big meeting, before speaking up in a group, before taking a risk. It doesn't matter how much you've achieved or how much effort you've put in. There's still this lingering fear that somehow you don't measure up. For some, it started in childhood. Maybe you were compared to a sibling who always seemed to do things better, or a teacher made an offhand comment that stuck with you. Maybe you were the kid who tried to fit in but always felt like an outsider. Or maybe you grew up in an environment where nothing you did ever seemed to be enough. Others experience it later in life, after a major failure or setback. You try something big, you take a risk, and it doesn't go the way you planned. That disappointment turns into self-doubt, and before you know it, you start questioning yourself in every area of life. And then there's social media, the highlight reel of everyone else's best moments. You scroll through endless images of success, confidence, and perfection. Deep down, you know it's not the full story, but your mind still plays the comparison game. Why don't I have it all figured out like they do? Why am I struggling while they seem to be thriving? The more you compare, the more you convince yourself that you're behind, that you're lacking, that something is wrong with you. But the most exhausting part, no one else sees it. On the outside, you look fine. You smile, you show up, you do the work. Maybe you even seem confident to others, but inside there's a battle raging, a constant fight between the version of you that wants to step up and the voice that keeps telling you you're not ready, you're not worthy, you're not enough. It's not just in your career or personal goals. It bleeds into everything, relationships, friendships, the way you see yourself when you look in the mirror. It creates hesitation where there should be action, self-doubt where there should be confidence. You second guess your decisions, play it safe when you should take a leap, and hold back even when you have something valuable to say. And the worst part, you think you're the only one feeling this way, but you're not. Step 2, rewriting the story you tell yourself. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are telling yourself a story. It's the quiet, constant dialogue running in the back of your mind, shaping the way you see yourself, the world, and your place in it. And for most people, that story isn't one of power, confidence, or success. It's one of doubt, fear, and limitation. It's a story that started forming years ago, built from past experiences, painful moments, and the words of others. Maybe your story is one of not being smart enough. Somewhere along the way you were told or you convinced yourself that you weren't intelligent, that you didn't have what it takes to succeed. Maybe you struggled in school, got overlooked for opportunities, or made mistakes that reinforced the belief. And now every time you face a challenge that requires confidence in your abilities, that story replays. I'm not the type of person who figures things out. I always struggle. I'm just not that smart. And the moment you say that to yourself, your brain goes to work, finding evidence to support it. You remember every time you failed a test, every moment you felt out of place, every mistake you ever made. Your mind collects proof, reinforcing the belief until it feels like absolute truth. Or maybe your story is about not being worthy of love, respect, or success. Maybe you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, based on achievements, looks, or how well you pleased others. Maybe you were hurt by someone you trusted, and that pain became part of your identity. Without realizing it, you started to believe, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough for real connection, I always mess things up. And so even when people appreciate you, even when opportunities come your way, you reject them, not consciously, but through small actions. Pulling away from relationships, self-sabotaging when things start going well, settling for less than you deserve. Because deep down, the story you tell yourself says you don't deserve more. The mind is powerful. It takes whatever you repeatedly tell it and treats it as reality. If you constantly replay a story of being inadequate, of not measuring up, your brain won't question it. It will simply assume it's true and shape your behaviors, your choices, and your emotions around that belief. That's why two people can go through the same experience but come out with completely different perspectives. One person faces rejection and tells themselves, I guess I wasn't good enough. Another person faces the same rejection and says, this wasn't the right fit, but I'll find something better. The difference isn't what happened. It's the story they told themselves about what it meant. And here's the kicker. The story you're living right now isn't necessarily your own. It was handed to you by parents, teachers, friends, media, past experiences. Some of it was shaped by other people's fears, insecurities, and limitations that they unknowingly passed down to you. You absorbed their doubts, their expectations, their criticisms, and over time, you started owning them as your own. You started believing that their version of you was the real you. But what if it's not? What if the story you've been living by is just a habit? A script you've been running on repeat, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. What if at any moment you had the power to rewrite it? Step 3, mastering your emotional state. Emotions are powerful. They control how you think, how you act, and ultimately the results you get in your life. When you're in a strong, confident, and focused emotional state, you make decisions that push you forward. You take risks. You speak up. You go after what you want without hesitation. But when you're in a state of fear, doubt, or frustration, everything changes. Your mind becomes clouded. Your energy drops, and you hesitate. You procrastinate. You second guess yourself. And before you know it, you're stuck, paralyzed by emotions that feel bigger than you. What most people don't realize is that emotions don't just happen to us. They're not random. They're patterns, habits we've trained ourselves into over time. If you've been feeling anxious, uncertain, or unmotivated lately, it's not because you're broken or because life is against you. It's because you've conditioned yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously, to live in that emotional state. You've built neural pathways that make stress, fear, or self-doubt your default mode. But the good news, just as you trained yourself into those emotions, you can train yourself out of them. Your emotional state isn't something you have to be at the mercy of. It's something you can take control of if you know how. And it all comes down to 3 things: your physiology, your focus, and your language. First, let's talk about physiology. Your body and your emotions are directly connected. The way you move, the way you breathe, the way you hold yourself, it all influences how you feel. Think about the last time you were really confident, really excited. How was your posture? Were your shoulders back? Was your chest open? How did you breathe? How did you move? Now compare that to the last time you felt defeated or insecure. How was your posture then? Probably hunched over, small, closed off. Your breathing was likely shallow, your energy low. That's not a coincidence. Your body is constantly sending signals to your brain about how you should feel. If you want to change your emotional state instantly, start with your physiology. Stand tall, breathe deeply, move with certainty, smile, even when you don't feel like it. Your mind will catch up with what your body is doing. Next, shift your focus. Whatever you focus on, you feel. If you constantly focus on what's going wrong, what you don't have, or what you're afraid of, you will feel stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed. Your brain is like a camera. It zooms in on whatever you point it toward. If you want to feel powerful, confident, and motivated, start directing your focus toward things that empower you. Ask better questions. Instead of, why am I not good enough? Ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of, what if I fail? Ask, How can I make this work? Your mind will always find answers to the questions you ask it. So make sure you're asking questions that lead you towards strength, not fear. And finally, change your language. The words you use, both out loud and in your own head, shape your emotions more than you realize. If you constantly tell yourself, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stuck, how do you think you're going to feel? Those words create a reality in your mind. But what if you shifted the language? What if instead of I'm stressed, you said I'm handling a lot and I'm figuring it out? Instead of I'm failing, you said I'm learning. Instead of I'm not good enough, you said I'm growing into the best version of myself. Language isn't just a way to describe your emotions, it's a way to direct them. Most people wait for their emotions to change before they take action. They think, once I feel confident, then I'll go for it. Once I feel motivated, then I'll start. But that's backward. Action creates emotion. You don't wait to feel a certain way. You train yourself into it. You move your body. You shift your focus. You change your words. And suddenly, your entire emotional state transforms. Mastering your emotional state is the key to mastering your life, because when you control your emotions, you control your decisions. And when you control your decisions, you control your destiny. Step 4, transform fear into fuel. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in your life. It can stop you in your tracks, keep you stuck in the same patterns, and make you hesitate when you should take action. It whispers in the back of your mind, telling you all the reasons why you're not ready, why you might fail, why you shouldn't even try. It's the thing that makes you procrastinate, avoid risks, and settle for less than you deserve. And for most people, fear is something they run from. They see it as the enemy, as something to be avoided at all costs. But what if fear wasn't something to escape? What if instead of letting it hold you back, you could use it to push you forward? Fear isn't the problem. The problem is how you respond to it. Most people feel fear and immediately shrink. They see it as a stop sign, as proof that they're not ready or that something is too risky. But fear is actually a sign of growth. It's proof that you're stepping into something bigger than where you are now. The people who succeed at the highest levels aren't fearless. They feel fear just like everyone else. The difference is they use it. They take that energy, that adrenaline, and they turn it into fuel. Think about the last time you were afraid to do something, but you did it anyway. Maybe it was speaking up in a meeting, going after an opportunity, or having a tough conversation. You felt the fear, but instead of backing down, you leaned in. And when you came out on the other side, what happened? You grew, you gained confidence. You proved to yourself that you were stronger than your fear. That's the key. Fear isn't a wall, it's a doorway. It's not there to stop you, it's there to test you. The reason fear feels so overwhelming is because most people let it control their focus. The moment they feel it, their mind starts playing worst case scenarios. What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not good enough? And the more you focus on fear, the bigger it gets. But what if, instead of focusing on what could go wrong, you focused on what could go right? What if, instead of thinking about failure, you thought about how much stronger you'd be on the other side? What if you saw fear not as a warning, but as a challenge? There's a simple truth about fear. It's just energy. Your body doesn't actually know the difference between fear and excitement. Think about it. When you're scared, your heart beats faster, your breathing changes, your adrenaline spikes. Now think about when you're excited. What happens? The exact same thing. Your body reacts the same way. It's your mind that labels it as fear or excitement. The next time you feel fear, reframe it. Instead of saying, I'm nervous, say, I'm excited. Instead of I'm scared, say, I'm getting ready for something big. Your body is already primed for action. You just have to direct that energy in the right way. Another way to transform fear into fuel is to change what it means to you. Most people see fear as a signal to stop. But what if you trained yourself to see it as a green light? What if every time you felt fear, you used it as a sign that you were on the right track? Because here's the thing, fear doesn't show up when you're playing small. It shows up when you're stepping into something bigger. It shows up when you're about to grow. If you're never afraid, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Look at the people who have accomplished the most in life. Athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders, artists. Every single one of them has faced fear. The difference is they don't let it control them. They use it as fuel. Michael Jordan didn't stop playing because he feared missing a shot. Elon Musk didn't stop building companies because he feared failure. Oprah Winfrey didn't stop speaking because she feared judgment. They felt the fear and they did it anyway. And every time they faced it, they got stronger. You can do the same thing, but it starts with a decision. The decision to stop letting fear hold you back and start using it as a tool. The moment you change your relationship with fear, everything changes. Because on the other side of fear is growth. On the other side of fear is confidence. On the other side of fear is the life you're meant to live. Step 5, prove yourself wrong. There's a voice inside your head that tells you who you are. It tells you what you're capable of, what you should or shouldn't do, what's possible for you and what's not. And for most people, that voice is not their biggest supporter, it's their biggest critic. It's the voice that tells you you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not talented enough, you're not the kind of person who succeeds at that level. And the problem isn't just that the voice exists, it's that you believe it, you accept it as truth without ever questioning where it came from, whether it's accurate or whether it even belongs to you. Most of the time, that voice was shaped by experiences you've had in the past. Things people told you, failures you've gone through, situations that made you feel small. Maybe a teacher once made you feel like you weren't smart. Maybe you grew up in an environment where people didn't believe in big dreams. Maybe you made a mistake once, and instead of seeing it as a lesson, you turned it into a label. And now every time you try to step up, that old belief kicks in and pulls you back down. Most of the time, that voice was shaped by experiences you've had in the past, things people told you, failures you've gone through, situations that made you feel small. Maybe a teacher once made you feel like you weren't smart. Maybe you grew up in an environment where people didn't believe in big dreams. Maybe you made a mistake once, and instead of seeing it as a lesson, you turned it into a label, and now every time you try to step up, that old belief kicks in and pulls you back down. But here's the truth. That voice is lying to you. Those doubts, those fears, those limitations, they're not real. They're just stories you've been telling yourself. Stories that have been running on repeat for so long that they feel like facts. But facts and beliefs are not the same thing. A belief is just a thought you've repeated so many times that it feels true, and just like any story, it can be rewritten. Think about this. How many times in your life have you been wrong about something? How many times have you assumed something wouldn't work out only to be surprised? How many times have you doubted yourself only to prove yourself wrong? There are moments in your past where you thought you weren't strong enough, but you got through it anyway. Moments when you thought you weren't ready, but you stepped up anyway. Moments when you thought you'd fail, but you found a way. Those moments exist. But do you focus on them, or do you only focus on the moments where you fell short? Your mind will always find evidence for whatever you choose to believe. If you believe you're not capable, your brain will search for proof of that. Every failure, every mistake, every insecurity. But if you decide to believe something different, your brain will find proof of that too. If you start telling yourself, I always figure things out, I always find a way, I am capable, I am strong, I am resourceful, your mind will begin to search for the proof to back that up. And the more you do that, the more you'll start to shift your identity. Because that's what this is really about. Identity. Your life is a reflection of what you believe about yourself. If you see yourself as someone who always struggles, who never quite measures up, who isn't meant for success, your actions will follow that belief. You'll hesitate, you'll procrastinate, you'll hold back. But if you shift that identity, if you decide to see yourself as someone who is powerful, capable, and worthy, your actions will follow that too. And the best way to change that identity, prove yourself wrong. Every time that voice in your head tells you you can't do something, do it anyway. Every time it tells you you're not enough, push yourself to take one more step. Every time it says you'll never change, show yourself that you can. Because with every action, you create new proof. Proof that the old story was wrong, that the limitations you thought were real were just illusions, that you are far more capable than you've ever given yourself credit for. Think about the most successful people in the world. Do you think they never doubted themselves? Do you think they never had moments where they thought, maybe I'm not good enough? Of course they did. The difference is they didn't accept those doubts as truth. They questioned them, they challenged them, they decided that just because they had a fear didn't mean they had to listen to it, and because they refused to accept those limitations, they rewrote their story. You can do the same thing, but it starts with making a choice. The choice to stop believing the old version of yourself and start proving it wrong. The choice to stop waiting for permission to be great and start acting like the person you're capable of becoming. The choice to stop letting fear dictate your future and start stepping into your potential one bold decision at a time. Step 6, decide who you are. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are making decisions about who you are. You are deciding what kind of person you are, what you stand for, what you're capable of, and what kind of life you deserve. But the real question is, are you making those decisions consciously, or are you letting them be shaped by the world around you? Because if you don't decide who you are, life will decide for you. Your past experiences, your environment, the people around you, they will all try to shape your identity. And if you're not careful, you'll end up living by a version of yourself that isn't truly yours. Most people never take the time to define who they really are. Instead, they adopt an identity that was given to them. Maybe they were told as a child that they weren't smart, so they grew up believing it. Maybe they failed once, and now they see themselves as someone who always struggles. Maybe they've been through pain, rejection, or disappointment, and they let those experiences define their worth. And without even realizing it, they live their entire lives based on a script they never wrote, a script shaped by other people's opinions, by past failures, by fears, by circumstances. But here's the truth. Your identity is not set in stone. It's not something you inherit. It's something you create. You don't have to be who you were yesterday. You don't have to be defined by your past, your mistakes, or your limitations. You have the power to decide at any moment who you are and what you stand for. Look at the most successful, confident, and fulfilled people in the world. They weren't born with a special identity. They weren't handed success. They decided who they were going to be, and then they lived in alignment with that decision. They chose to see themselves as strong, resilient, and capable long before they had proof. And because they made that choice, they started taking the kind of actions that reinforce that belief. Your identity is shaped by what you consistently do. If you see yourself as someone who is disciplined and committed, you will act in ways that align with that identity. If you see yourself as someone who is weak or incapable, you will unconsciously act in ways that reinforce that belief. Your brain is always looking for ways to prove your identity right. So the question is, what identity are you proving right every day? Most people wait for external validation before they decide who they are. They think, once I succeed, then I'll believe I'm a winner. Once I'm confident, then I'll start taking risks. Once I'm respected, then I'll see myself as valuable. But that's not how it works. You have to decide first. You have to choose your identity before you have proof of it. Because once you make that decision, your actions will follow. And when your actions follow, the results will come. Think about the person you want to become. How does that person think? How do they act? What kind of habits do they have? What kind of energy do they bring into the world? Now, ask yourself, what's stopping you from being that person right now? The answer is nothing but a decision. You don't need permission. You don't need the perfect moment. You don't need more qualifications, more validation, or more time. You just need to decide. Every moment is an opportunity to reinforce the identity you want to create. Every time you show up with confidence, you reinforce the belief that you are confident. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you reinforce the belief that you are disciplined. Every time you push past fear, you reinforce the belief that you are courageous. The more you act in alignment with your chosen identity, the more real it becomes. But it all starts with a choice. The choice to stop living by the old story, the choice to stop letting the past define you, the choice to stop waiting and start becoming. Because the moment you decide who you are, everything changes. At the end of the day, your life is shaped by the decisions you make, about your beliefs, your emotions, your fears, and most importantly, about who you are. You are not your past, you are not your failures, you are not the doubts, the fears, or the limitations that have held you back. You are whatever you decide to be. Fear will always be there, but you don't have to let it control you. Instead of running from it, use it. Instead of believing the old stories that tell you you're not enough, prove yourself wrong. Instead of waiting for permission, step into the identity of the person you know you're meant to be. Every time you challenge your own doubts, every time you take action despite fear, every time you rewrite the narrative in your head, you take back your power. Your emotional state is in your hands. Your beliefs are in your hands. Your future is in your hands. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to stay stuck in old patterns, or are you going to take control and create a new reality for yourself? This is your moment. Right here, right now, you get to decide. Who are you going to be? What are you going to stand for? What kind of life are you going to create? Because the only thing standing between you and the person you could be is the decision to step up and own it.